we want to welcome you to the Islam Unravelled Anti-Racist podcast. And we really thank you being the federal leader of the Green Party of Canada. It's an honor to have you. And for you, a president, a Black Jewish woman leader of a federal party of Canada. So an amazing accomplishment, and very grateful for you to join us. And just to start off for the viewers and the listeners, if you wouldn't mind introducing just kind of the Green Party of Canada for those that may not be aware of the mission, the vision. Obviously, the environment is very closely tied in climate change with the Green Party, but I know there's a lot more in terms of anti-racist, in terms of other initiatives. If you wouldn't mind talking about the Green Party of Canada, and we can start from there.
Certainly. Well, as you said, I'm the new leader of the Green Party of Canada, relatively new. I've been the leader since October of 2020. And I also want to acknowledge where I am. I'm here on the traditional territories of the Mississauga of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee, and the Huron-Wendat, also known as Toronto. And yes, I've been in this position now for 6 months. And prior to that, we had quite a long leadership race. This was really something that was important for our party to do, because we had Elizabeth May leading the party for many, many years. We are a party that I was attracted to the years ago when I joined it. A party that is very progressive, a party that is really focused on helping to identify the most innovative, progressive policies on any issue that we face, not just issues, but also opportunities that we have. And before becoming the leader of the party, I was someone who had run in the 2019 election here in Toronto. I also served as our international affairs critic as well. And my background is, I guess we have 2 primary chapters. There's the international chapter, where I worked in international affairs and public diplomacy for our government, and multilaterally, and also in civil society. And then also the chapter where I was focused on increasing diversity in politics and public policy, and understanding the barriers that underrepresented groups faced when they sought to engage in public policy in this country, and particularly in leadership roles. And so I bring all of that to this moment in the party, a moment when we're really committed and trying to communicate a very strong commitment to diversity, a really strong commitment to democracy as well, trying to stay true to our roots in being a truly innovative party. And we believe that's really necessary now, because this is the moment for unapologetic ambition, a moment when we should be talking about how we can forge a truly just society. That means racially just, socially just, economically just. It's a time for us to be talking about a green recovery, and also forging a social safety net that is complete and that allows every person to live in dignity in this country.
And with that, the mandate in one of your talks that I've seen on YouTube, universal pharmacare and a guaranteed livable income. Maybe we could talk about that, because these are obviously very timely and very important topics. So please expand on that.
Absolutely, they are indeed, and it was a disappointment to us not to see either of those, for instance, in the 2021 federal budget, exactly because there really is a very strong and growing consensus about the need for both of those. In terms of guaranteed livable income, for those who followed, and I know a lot of people don't. I mean, I'm not kidding myself about how closely people are following politics right now. But for those who did follow the conventions of the Liberals and the NDP, for instance, one of the policies that was voted for overwhelmingly by the members, the grassroots of both parties, was universal basic income. We call it guaranteed livable income. And of course, it's been a policy of the Green Party for many, many years. So the pandemic has really reinforced why it's necessary and why there really is no substitute for a guaranteed livable income. If we hadn't had all of these emergency benefits that were put in place in the early days of the pandemic, we know clearly that many people would have been left with no support whatsoever and would really have fallen very quickly into a very desperate situation. And so the question now is, what replaces that? Given that, you know, those benefits were an acknowledgement, and they are continue to be an acknowledgement that our system isn't complete, and that there are all kinds of people and workers and students and caregivers, et cetera, who aren't covered adequately by the system that we have. This is the time really for us to be working on what comes next. And that's where guaranteed livable income comes in. It is something that makes sure that everyone is covered, as a good universal program should do. And then in the case of pharmacare as well, there is consensus across party lines, you know, the Liberals, the NDP, our party, and certainly amongst our grassroots. And of course, we have the commission report that indicated how critical universal pharmacare was. And the time is long overdue for that. We are the only country that has Medicare without having universal pharmacare. And there are, even if there's one person who can't afford the medication that their doctor prescribes to them because they can't afford it, that's one person too many. And we need to have a system that is going to make sure every single person has access to medication when it's prescribed to them. It's just good common sense and good economical sense as well.
Absolutely, and very important for the country. Now, topically, which is affecting us, a lot of things in the United States with Black Lives Matter and the Derek Chauvin trial, where he was convicted on all counts. And obviously, as a member of the Black community and all of us that are allies with our fellow community members that are minorities, please talk about that. Obviously, Black Lives Matter, and also the Black community of Canada, and then other marginalized communities like Indigenous peoples, the Muslim community, the Jewish community, and others, and the Asian community. So we're seeing racism kind of increasing at a level that we probably didn't anticipate, with how social media is being weaponized by extremist groups to further racist agendas. Let's talk about the impact of racism and where we have to go as a country in Canada to combat this, especially a lot of racist rhetoric coming online from around the world, mobilizing bad actors to come out against people of color and minority communities.
Yes, yeah, social media certainly has added a very troubling and vexatious element to those who seek to propagate supremacist ideologies, you know, whether it's based on race or religion, those who seek to fan the flames of hate and intolerance and division. It's very hard to keep up with the pace of technology in terms of how it's been able to facilitate all of that. You know, what I observed during the leadership race, and also now as a political leader and someone who is relatively new to social media. I mean, I never engaged in any way with social media before 2019, and not really until 2020. I created my first social media account in the summer of 2019, and I'd never had one before. So as someone who's always, and I'd never gone on social media. And so as someone who's relatively new, one thing that I did observe, I have observed as a politician, is that you have to be able to respond to these things in real time. You know, it's so quick the way that one hateful post can, or one conspiratorial post can take on a life of its own and become an entire thing, not just in one place, but around the country and around the world. That it's really important to find a way to call out and to condemn and to root out hateful posts in real time and not save it for later, because I find that any kind of silence or lack of reaction really emboldens those who would seek to create these kind of divisions. So that's something that, you know, of course, the tech giants have their role to play, but it's also a question of individual responsibility as well. Every person who sees these kind of posts has a responsibility to call it out, to condemn it, and not to give it oxygen so that it can grow. And of course, regulation is going to play a big part in this as well. And we need stronger regulation of online communications. It shouldn't be separate from other kinds of communication that are much better regulated and policed. So yes, you know, this is something where I think we're always going to be running to catch up. We're always going to have to be adapting and finding new techniques. But certainly those basic things are really important. Calling it out every time and in real time.
You brought up something very important, is legislation. And I think the tech giants are so large, with Facebook having close to 2 billion users and Google billions of users, YouTube. So a lot of that content, it requires citizen action to be able to flag it and report it, but also governments to put in mandates. In the European Union, they have the European Code of Conduct that any hateful comment within 24 or hateful content that's been reported according to the European Code of Conduct, it gets taken down within 24 hours. Similarly, in Canada, where what we're seeing is the online world is now really becoming the real world, because it's shaping beliefs, attitudes, biases, prejudices, discrimination, older people, younger people. And it's so insidious that, again, as people from communities that aren't necessarily white Canadian, people that, you know, we interviewed a former neo-Nazi, and he was talking about how in the 1980s, how difficult it was to recruit one-on-one, but now online to recruit people to crazy viewpoints is a lot easier than it was pre-internet days. So I know this is a roundabout kind of discussion, but legislation and really uniting all the parties to focus on this important aspect to safeguard the minds and beliefs and attitudes of our nation and our beliefs.
Absolutely. This is something that we have to really be vigilant about. It's something that we have to accept that we will need to continue to innovate in order to be as proactive as we can be in identifying it and rooting it out. There's no question about that at all. And you know, just this entire period over the last year or so has really, really reinforced that government has a big role to play, period. You know, we turned to government when the pandemic first hit for support, for guidance, for a strategy. There are some things we've realized only government is big enough to respond to effectively. We have learned the limits of what we can expect from the market as well, in terms of what it is willing to do in terms of self-regulation. And so absolutely, government has a very, very important role to play in ensuring that, you know, to the extent that you can regulate online hate out of existence, that you do, and that we're attracting people to our civil service, to politics, that are just as clever as the people who are being attracted to the tech companies that are being attracted to these organizations seeking to promote these hateful ideologies. And it really is going to be just an ongoing thing. But I think that we have seen, you know, for instance, just looking down at our neighbors in the States, what happens when you're not vigilant enough, what happens when there is too much space allowed, when online communications aren't regulated well enough, when misinformation is allowed to spread. And there's no reason that we should feel that we're immune to that. I would add to that, though, that we do ourselves a disservice when we don't get to the root causes, because we have to accept this. There will always be people that see advantage or seek advantage in spreading these kind of ideologies. And so we need to kind of do what we can to inoculate ourselves and our society against that. And one of the most important ways that we can do that is by preventing growing inequality and growing discrimination. We can do that by working proactively to dismantle systemic racism, systemic discrimination within our institutions. Because inequality and inequity breeds dissatisfaction, and that dissatisfaction will go somewhere, and it will find a home with people that seek to take advantage of that inequity and inequality to spread these ideologies.
And you brought up something very important, is the talent of people to join the political process. And yourself, like, I have a daughter who's 13 years old and a daughter who's 4 years old, and you're a role model in the sense that it seems like your life is a trajectory of political service. Like, you're a founder of the Canadian Centre for Political Leadership, like many things that you've done. Please talk about your personal journey, because I would say your personal journey to be someone who is a public representative. How did you make that decision early on in life to go down this path, which, as you know, it's fraught with many challenges and a lot of criticism from all quarters? How do you personally manage yourself, and how did you make that decision early in life to go down this path?
You know, it's really hard to, I get asked that question, and I say it's really hard to pinpoint the moment exactly. It's something that, at least in my case, I guess some people can, but in my case, I come from a family of public servants, people who chose careers that were really intended to be of service to the public. My mom was a teacher. She's a retired elementary school teacher. And my grandmother had been a nurse before she came to Canada, and then worked as a personal support worker in the hospitals and nursing homes after she came here. And so, you know, there was just a lot of respect for the work that public servants did. There was always the expectation that I would, and my siblings, that we would always find a way, whatever path we chose career-wise, to be of service. And so for me, I think it was just always there. And it was something that I was attracted to. I was always interested in public policy, and being someone who at a really young age was lucky to get some early exposure to politics, you know, just as a kid working as a page in the legislature in Canada, things like that, working in the Senate when I was a student at university. I really developed a very deep respect early on for the role of government and what governments can do to make life better for people. And we've talked about some of that today. And so I just knew that whatever I did, I wanted it to be of service to the community. And so I've done a lot of, I mean, it's not clear, it's not a straight path. And, you know, to your daughters, that's what I always try to emphasize. You have to find your own way. You have to do the things that you enjoy, and not follow some path that someone else has set out for you. Because it's not linear. My path from being that a 4-year-old to now is not one straight line. I did lots of things just for the sheer love of it, like producing a play that had a long run here in Toronto. Of course, I have 2 children, and working around their schedules so I could be there for them. You know, deciding to work abroad for a number of years, and so. I think the thing I'm most proud of is the courageousness and a bit of fearlessness that it takes to keep changing your path and keep following your interests without feeling like you need to follow a certain road. And that's really what I encourage, particularly young women, to do. The other thing that made a big difference for me is having great role models. And, you know, I didn't call them that, it wasn't an official thing, but I was lucky to grow up at a time when there was this extraordinary generation of women, and Black women in particular, that had done some of these things that I thought maybe one day I might want to do. We had Rosemary Brown, who was a very senior leader within the NDP party and almost won the leadership of the NDP party back in the 70s. Jean Augustine, who became the first Black woman to be a minister. We had Lincoln Alexander. We had Zanena Conde, who was the first Black woman to become a minister in Ontario. So I had the examples of the people that had it tougher than me and succeeded. So there really weren't many excuses for me at the end of the day.
So like standing on the shoulders of giants in a way.
That's right. 100%, 100%. We must always acknowledge that and try to, make our shoulders broad enough and strong enough so that someone can stand on ours as well. That's really important to me. Even in these early days, I'm still trying to leave enough space to mentor. I try to accept every single invitation that I receive from high schools and elementary schools and youth groups to speak with them, even if it's just 5 or 10 people on the call, and that's always just between us. I don't publicize it, I don't post about it. It's just between me and the kids, but it's because I want them to know that they're supported and that they have people out there that are rooting for them, that value their leadership and that want to see them succeed. Because we absolutely, we already need to be cultivating the next generations, and every single person in a position like mine and yours has a very important role to play in doing that.
Absolutely, and you, with youth in particular, to give that personal contact and be real with them, because youth can pick up heart to heart how authentic and true we are, and taking that time out for them, because as a parent, you're a parent, we need to give individualized time, and we need to give time. And really, I really want to just thank you for the work that you do. Now, one other aspect I wanted to talk about was perspective, and you have world perspective with the European Union, the mission to the European Union, with Barcelona, with going to Princeton in New Jersey. So you've had a perspective from the US, you've had perspective from Europe, kind of enlightening where you are today. How have you found being in other parts of the world, reflecting on the kind of the good and the bad, and our vision for a greater and more inclusive Canada? Maybe we could just talk about perspective and how perspective has informed you.
Oh, it's so valuable to me. I'm so grateful to have had those opportunities. Every single person that is in politics brings their perspective, as you said. We absolutely do. Every person in public policy brings it. Whether it's politicians or their staff or the journalists who report on it. It's really not correct to imagine that people don't bring their own perspective, their biases, et cetera, to the work that they do. They absolutely do. And so in my case, having had the opportunity first to grow up in a city that was extremely diverse. I mean, there was never any majority in my classrooms. There were easily 20 different nationalities or children of immigrants from 20 different countries in the classes when I grew up. That made a huge difference. Living abroad and having experiences that so many people in Canada have. I had the experience of being an immigrant and having to navigate a brand new country with a language that I didn't speak, trying to figure out how to get my kids enrolled in school, how to get my credentials, which I had been so proud of and had assumed would be a global passport, even to be recognized, which is a very common experience for lots of people with foreign credentials that move to Canada. So having those experiences help. And then certainly from the perspective of social policy, seeing the way that other people live, the way that other countries have designed their social structures, learning from their experiences has been hugely, hugely beneficial as well. And I really try to hang on to that. My default is always to say, okay, we have an issue here in Canada that we're working on. Well, what are they doing? What are they doing in France? What are they doing in New Zealand? What are they doing in Tanzania? What can we learn from the experience of other countries, of other peoples, about how they've approached it? And that helps to make my work, my public policy work, much more rich. It also helps to bring in empathy and I think an emotional intelligence, which is also really important when you're doing public policy. And all of this to say, imagine what it would be like if we could take that and make it exponential and bring a multiplicity of perspectives to our politics. You know, imagine how much richer our policy would be. Imagine how much better it would be and how much more likely it would be to succeed. And so when we talk about diversity, it's not just, you know, for the symbol, it's also for the content. It's also for the substance of the ideas that it could bring and that we're missing out on when we don't have it.
And that richness that you referred to, that richness of experience and perspective and experience, to bring that to the table officially. And as you said, I think the theme of this conversation is getting involved, inspiring the best and the brightest, the people that just care, that want to do something, get involved in the political process. And you've achieved that like at a very high level in our great country of Canada. And I know we have a short time for our discussion. In closing, there's also another organization that you've founded or helped create is Echoing Green, and just investing in the future, investing in leadership. In closing, let's talk about Echoing Green and that mission and how we're going to foster and invest in our next generation of social entrepreneurship.
Well, I wish I could take credit for that one because it's an extraordinary foundation, but I was actually the recipient of a very important grant from Echoing Green. Echoing Green is a global foundation that's based in the United States. They're what's called a venture philanthropy, and by that, it's really the same as venture capital in the sense that they invest in the person and the idea, even before you've done anything, right? They're really investing in the idea. And a venture philanthropist and this foundation, what they do is they invest in what they consider to be groundbreaking ideas by people that they believe will be able to actually execute those ideas. And it's so important. And there aren't very many foundations like that, because I'm sure you know all about this. You normally have to prove that you're able to do the thing. You normally have to already be doing it for years before a government will give you a grant, or before a foundation will give you a grant. Those first few years are always the toughest. And so for me, when I was founding the Canadian Centre for Political Leadership, that grant was really, really important because it allowed us to get started when it was just an idea in my head. The idea being that if we could create an institute that sought to understand the reasons why all of these brilliant leaders from diverse groups were not well represented in public policy and in politics, and if we prepared them for those opportunities, and if we broke down the barriers and worked with the parties to make them more open and inclusive, that we could change politics in Canada, that we could create that diversity of perspective that we were just talking about. So that's where Echoing Green came in, and it was really important to me. And I want to see more of that. I want to see more organizations in Canada investing in those great big ideas at the early stages. One of the things that I helped to found, I guess it's about a year and a half ago, to going on 2 years now, was the 1834 Fellowship. And the idea there was to support the next generation of big policy, public policy thinkers in the Black community. So this is a program run by Operation Black Vote Canada that identifies 20 high potential young Black Canadians who are interested in public policy, and takes them on a journey for a year, an intensive journey through public policy, training, mentorship, all leading up to what we hope will be 10 years from now, an incredible generation of new leaders. So as you said, that early investment in talent, in diverse talent is so important. And I'm always going to show up for that and try to support that in any way I can.
Absolutely. And Annamie, great to talk with you. I know we could keep talking. I'd love to keep talking, but in respect of your time and as being the leader of the Green Party of Canada, an honor for you to join us. And we look forward to publishing this very soon and reaching a wider audience, and looking forward to working with you on future endeavors. And my daughters can stand on your shoulders in the future as leaders of this country as well.
Oh, I can't wait for that day. That sounds wonderful. And thank you so much to you for your important work and for your leadership. And, you know, I wouldn't be the leader of a political party if I didn't tell you, if you ever decide you want to run for us, you'd be very welcome.
Thank you
I'm
so
always
much.
recruiting, you know, there's that expression, there's this expression you probably heard, always be closing. Mine is always be recruiting. So, you know, when I see leadership, I acknowledge it, and then I try to recruit it. But thank you so much for your work, which I know is making a difference. Thank you for injecting all of these very important ideas into the public discourse, the public conversation. It's really very timely, as we all know what you're trying to do, and you know, I'm here also to support you in your work in any way that I can. So thank you very much.